Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, it is my extreme pleasure to finally be able to announce the release of our first ever mobile app, Drillbook. Drillbook has been in development for probably the past 5 or 6 months. Myself and a massively talented member of the team, Adam, have been putting this together. Drillbook is built to be the home of training ideas for drill grounds across the fire and rescue service all over the world. The goal of the app is to deliver a community-built library of content built by firefighters for firefighters. If you jump onto the App Store, if you look in the notes and the links below the podcast, you'll find a way to get onto Drillbook, and you'll find it on social media as well. This is built for new officers, instructors, training reference holders, firefighters in development, people going for application, people going for interview. You will find an area in there specifically with all of the instant debriefs. So if you're a big fan of the instant debriefs that we do on the podcast, you can go in there specifically and look at one area where they all kept. There's Knots and Lines demos on there. There's radio messages where you can build your own messages and get into that habit of what you're looking for and how it should look. There's quick reference guides. There's interview questions, tactics, training, guidance. And you have the ability as well to put in all of your fantastic training ideas. What's that great drill you've done on station? What's that one you saw when you were covering somewhere else? Bang that into the app and share it with the whole world. We don't want to see all of these great ideas and these great training tips die when these people retire. So jump in there, have a look, input your own training ideas, and be part of a community-built library of content built by firefighters for firefighters all over the world. Go check it out.
Hi, my name is Trevor Williams. I am the creator of the Williams Key. This is a soft entry tool for first responders to gain access through doors without doing any damage. I used to install doors as a carpenter, and now I'm a fireman. I created this tool a few years ago just for myself. The shove knife has been around for a while, but I put my own twist on it, and my comrades kept asking me to make them one. So eventually I made a few for a few of my buddies, and it just took off from there. More and more people wanted it, and now we've sold almost 1,000 of these all over the world. These tools are used by first responders, so firefighters, EMTs, police. We've had military, some government purchases. If you're able to see the strike, you can grab it with the shove knife end. If there's a anti-vandal plate in the way, blocking you from getting that access, that's what the blade side is for. And you can reach behind that plate and still get to the strike. You can order these on williamskey.com. They come as a standard key that looks like this, or you can also get your name or your department or wherever you work customized on it. You can even send me a logo, we'll put it on the tool.
Trevor, good evening.
Hey, how are you?
I am awesome, brother. How the hell are you, my man?
Good. I'm glad we were able to make this work.
Yes, my apologies. Life slipped into a fast-flowing river, quite figuratively, for a little bit of a while there. But please don't take that as any professional reflection, my friend. I would never disrespect your time. We're always going to get this bit of time in now. Thank you for your time as well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. And I understand life's been crazy the last month or so. So I get it.
We don't use the visuals, so you're okay. But
okay.
that handsome mustache, and I see the Williams Key stuff in the background. That is for my visual pleasure. But I'll ask you for. I've literally got up the social media page on my right hand side here. I love the video you've got pinned to the start of it. Are you happy for us to steal the audio from that and put that at the beginning of this episode?
Yeah, that'd be great. No
Because
problem.
you do a fucking wonderful rundown of that, and you've got some great little bit of music about the product and about all that sort of jazz. But before we get into any of that sort of craziness, I wanted to give people a bit of an introduction. So you are currently a firefighter in Hollywood, is that right?
That's correct. With Los Angeles County Fire Department.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
We just had
We have a guy named Zuniga who works for county. We have fire department Humor. Who works for LA City. Okay. Fire Department Humor.
Fire Department Humor. Tyrone Hurst.
Tyrone, that's right. He's a friend of mine. He's done some work. We made some videos together, and
Dude's great.
I've met him. Yeah, he actually works down the street for me.
So, no way.
Different department, but we are able to get on the same fires together. We haven't yet, but hopefully one of these days.
I always say it's a small world, but you wouldn't want to paint it, would you? So it's coming that fucking small. But so you're a firefighter in Hollywood, but you actually grew up in South Africa, right?
I grew up in Africa. South Africa was one of the locations. Born in Virginia in the USA, but when I was 4, we moved to Zaire in Africa, and we were there during some civil unrest. This was in 1994. Back in the day, the Rwanda genocides were going on during that time, so we were affected by that. Zaire borders Rwanda.
Why the move? Why did
my
the family
parents
go over
were doing? Yeah, so my parents were doing emergency relief work through World Vision, which is a large nonprofit organization. They might even have an office out where you are. They're all over the world, though. People will sponsor kids and get them food and education, and for $30 a month or $50 or whatever you pledge. A lot of people know them for that, but they do a whole slew of other things: education, building houses, farming, clean water projects, all sorts of stuff. A whole spectrum.
So you were kind of destined to go into the emergency services, then your parents were big into it.
Yeah, so growing up, we were considered missionaries, and it was always helping people. Yeah, in Africa, I was there about 4 years until it started to get too violent and too dangerous, and they had us leave the country. But went to South Africa for about a year to cool off, but South Africa was rough too. Eventually, we ended up back in Zaire, which had changed its name due to the war to the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then from there, we got kicked out of Africa altogether and ended up in Connecticut in the USA, where I did some of my middle school, and then we ended up going to Haiti, which is an island in the Caribbean. So eventually I ended up in California. We were in Haiti for a couple years, and same situation. It was getting violent and civil unrest, and government was being overthrown. And then ended up in California, where I've been ever since for the last 18 years or so. I still travel, I still get out there, but this has been home base for me. And that being a firefighter was something I wanted to do pretty soon after leaving Haiti as a teenager. I was 15 when I got here, and people asked me, what are you going to do with yourself now? Do you know what you want to be? People always ask you that when you're a teenager, right?
I'm still asking myself that now.
So I started, So firefighting seemed to be right along the lines of the emergency work I'd been doing with my family growing up and helping people and serving. And I got involved with the department that I work with now. I got involved as a teenager doing ride-alongs. So they would let me go spend the night, a 24-hour shift, ride out, experience the fires, the blood, the conflicts, and the rewarding. I was about 16.
Fucking hell, that's crazy, isn't it? Like, you can't imagine people doing that easy. I mean, it's great that they do, and that exposure and that sort of awareness that gives you of the brutality of the world and how important the work is would probably tremendously inspire more people to go and do the job. But we have this big aversion to, and I can understand aspects of it, to like exposing children to trauma and stuff like that. But I did similar things when I was that age, and I don't think, although it's probably I have a self-contained bias, I don't think it affected me traumatically. I think it actually inspired me.
Yeah, so you find out pretty quick if it's for you or not.
Yeah.
Especially at a young age, if you're able to tolerate the blood, or if you feel uncomfortable, or you just know right away for the most part whether that's the way that you want to take your life and your career, because it's not for everybody. And
that's why I always think it doesn't really make a very good interview question when sometimes we do it in the UK where we're like, how do you think you will deal with dealing with deceased and traumatic incidents? Whatever you fucking say is relatively pointless anyway, because we're not going to know until we're there on the line and we've already invested a load of money in you and we've already trained you up, because we are so hypersensitive to exposing people to trauma. And I don't diminish the fact that it can do some tremendous damage exposing people unnecessarily to trauma. If they haven't got any context to put it in, like showing people graphic photos or just looking at something on YouTube, I don't think that's any use because you've got no context to put it in. But if you're actually there, like you were, seeing some of these incidents, seeing what's happening around it, seeing what's happened after, seeing the care that goes into the team, then you can start to contextualize what this means. But abstract trauma is fucking pointless, and just sitting there asking somebody, how are you going to deal with a dead body? It's a redundant question, I think.
I agree. Yeah, you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
And you could say the same thing about the army, the military, like how do you think you're going to do being shot at, or having your friend
but, oh no, I used to get in fights when I was at school, so I'll be fine. Yeah, it's fucking probably nothing like that.
Yeah.
So when did you officially join?
Okay, so when I was 18, that's when you're allowed to put in your application and apply. And of course, I wanted to work for the department that I'd been training with and doing the ride-alongs with. So that was my first application. I put it in as soon as I turned 18. The process over here is very competitive, and it took me 7 years to get hired.
No way.
I was testing with 10,000 people. Every aspect of the hiring process was spread out over a year. You start with the written test. If you do well with that, you get the oral interview, and it's heavily weighted on the oral interview and how well you do answering the questions. And they're looking for keywords like, are you good with diversity? How do you do under pressure?
Yeah,
are you
it
able
does
to
feel
adapt?
like sometimes it's a bit of a box ticking exercise now. I mean, I do like the fact that it's weighted more towards the oral exam, because some people, like just illiterate, can't write to fuck, and actually you would rather somebody can stand and deliver because that's what you're going to be doing on the job. But equally, I hate the fact that not very little of it is personal now. They don't really want to know as much about you as a person. They want to know if you can tick some of these boxes. And I feel like we're not getting all the right people sometimes. That's probably not for me to say, but interviews I've sat in, I've refused to be part of some of the interview processes now because I don't want to interview people with the set of questions we've got. They're just not very good.
Yeah, you're right. It's checking boxes, and you can give a great interview and be a great person, but if you're not saying the things that they want to hear and are able to check the box, you might not do as well.
Yeah.
So after the oral interview was a background check, and some departments will have a polygraph test. Mine did
Really?
not. No. I think I've never heard of anybody getting.
I don't think we've
test.
ever done a polygraph test in the UK. I imagine it just it's probably a bit more of an expense and people would get offended by asking them stuff like that. But I would much rather, because then even like some of the examples people have given in the oral exam, you can be like, did you ever really rescue somebody at the beach? And they'd be like, no, I fucking didn't actually know. Because some people can just make stuff up for their examples, can't they? And they're like, yeah, I was relied upon to get somebody off a mountain once. Oh, really? Were you? Yeah. And this is how I did it in a diverse and equal way.
Exactly. Yeah, you can sound like a rock star if you don't tell the truth. But yeah, so we got our our backgrounds, and that took me about a year. Well, it didn't take a year, but it was spread out after the backgrounds. I had to wait a year, and then I did my medical, and they check everything, make sure you're healthy. Um, but so much time went by, and there was hiring freezes. It was during a time where the economy was struggling and stuff. So they had done some freezes. So my background expired. So I had to go do that again. And then my medical expired. So I had to go do that again. So it was quite the process. I was 20, I think I was 26 by the time I actually got
7 years of applying.
the blessing.
You know what though? That kind of encourages me, because that does show I had to apply 4 times, and it shows a level of resiliency and a level of desire that you really want to do this. You're not just like applying off the cuff. But I did want to ask you about, like, before you go into these jobs, because I think in the States, or I know it's definitely the case in Canada, you have to do a whole bunch of your own qualifications first, and in certain ways you have to commit to being trained up as a paramedic. How did you have to have certain qualifications relating to the emergency services before you go in?
Yes. So when I applied, you needed a driver's license, high school diploma, that was bare minimum, and then that's it. Now how they have it is you need at least a EMT certification, EMT basic, and that's like a lower level than a paramedic.
Yeah, emergency medical technicians.
And then some of the classes, okay, you got them too. Cool. I just want to make sure for all the listeners, if they didn't know what that was. But we've also had classes where it's full paramedic. Everybody had to be a paramedic before they got hired.
So you've got to invest in that training yourself. That must be quite expensive to like get yourself trained up in that before you even get the job. And that's just got to come out your own pocket.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh. So it depends what department is hiring and what they're looking for. Some require you to be a paramedic and they only hire medics. Some hire you just right out of in theory, right out of high school, but it usually takes a lot longer than that. And then some departments require you to put yourself through your own training academy too, which you would have to do through a college. So you go to college, 2 years of fire science classes, and then 8 to 16 week fire academy, and then you're state trained, and then you have to turn that in when you apply. And these are usually smaller departments. And you still might not get it. So I had that too. I did a college fire science course. I got my EMT. I went through the state academy, and LA County didn't want any of that stuff. So that was all just extra, because I actually applied to 60 different fire departments. I traveled all over the US in the meantime, trying to get hired. So I didn't just all put my eggs in one basket with LA County. While I was waiting, I was testing for New York and Texas and all these other big departments.
Mate, if it had to be like that in the UK, I don't think we'd have like 10% of the firefighters that we have, because with greatest of respect, I just don't think that level of commitment to your own personal development is there as much. I will say there's obviously some incredible, random, weird freaks still over here. I'd love to put myself in that group who would probably still do it. But yeah, man, I think that would be such a fucking cultural shift for us to ask people to invest that much, because you're betting on yourself, and some people don't like betting on themselves. They have really low self-belief.
Yeah. So you end up getting some really high caliber individuals getting hired for these jobs. But it's mostly with the higher paying big city departments. And then 90% of the rest of the US is volunteer. So you can be a firefighter the rest of the US without all these qualifications. You get a pager, and you get some training. You probably meet once a week to once a month to get to know everybody and get familiar with equipment. But you're only getting a fire maybe once or twice a year, and it's only fires. It's not the medical training that we do. We do everything. We do medical, we do fires, we have a hazmat team, we have a search and rescue team, we have helicopters, we have wildland firefighters. So
So we're
we
the
cover
same as
all the
that, I
bases,
think, because
and
we're
we
not
just had a team
as
come back.
we're not as we're not as densely populated as you. We have that kind of everywhere. But sorry, I just interrupted you. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I was just gonna say we just had a team come back from Turkey.
Yeah, man.
So they do the international search and rescue as well.
That's
So
incredible teams out there. We just sent
yeah,
70 something people as part of a heavy rescue team. I was at the airport packing them all up, getting them all off. I'd been to a couple of Kosovo and Canada and a few places before, so I didn't get to go on this one. So it is a very sore subject. As much as like we're not disaster tourists and we are there to do a purpose, and it's horrible and all that sort of stuff. As a firefighter, you're like, that's the whole fucking point of doing the training. So the fact I didn't get to go on that one, I'll be brutally honest, I'm pretty pissed off about. But the team that went did an incredible job, worked alongside, like you say, our US brothers and sisters, alongside Spain, Germany, so many other communities from around the world. International search and rescue sort of community was at large there. Hell of an incident, honestly. But you actually, that reminds me of something else I had on my list, because you experienced not similar, but you've had a past of disaster and incidents during your time in Haiti, didn't you?
yes. So me and my family are survivors of the 2010 7.0 Haiti earthquake. I wasn't even living in Haiti at the time. I had already established myself in California, and I hadn't been back to Haiti in 5 years. I just so happened to be visiting my family that week, the week of the earthquake. And it is something that changed Haiti forever, changed my life forever, and my family as well. I'll look, spoiler alert, we thought we lost my family because they were in a 5-story apartment collapse on the bottom floor, my mom and my 2 sisters. But they are good. They survived. So I'm just going to throw that out there before I start the story, because it's everybody gets distracted by that part, and then they stop listening to the rest of it. So, yeah. So this was January 10th or January 12th, 2010, around just before 4 p.m. And I was on the second floor of an orphanage when this earthquake started to hit. And even living in California, where we're known for earthquakes, I had never really felt one, nothing substantial. So when this started, I didn't know it was an earthquake. It felt like a big entourage of trucks were rumbling down the street at first. And this earthquake was 39 seconds long. So the first like 2 or 3 seconds, I was like, oh, that's weird. It's kind of shaky around here. And then after 5 seconds, it started to get really loud and violently shake. And then after that, it seemed like forever. Like it seemed like way longer than 39 seconds. But buildings started coming down around us. There was like just debris was filling the air. They were screaming. Somebody shouted earthquake. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I know it's an earthquake now. But I was starting to look for my escape, because I was like, building's coming down right now. I'm on the second floor. It's all concrete. And I was on a balcony. So I looked over the balcony. I saw a truck down below. I was like, okay, I could probably jump on the hood of that truck and cushion my fall if this building starts to come down. So that was my plan. But the building I was in never collapsed. It got cracks in all the walls. There's 110 orphans in that orphanage, so it's really good. It did not collapse. And then the second floor that I was on was all special needs kids, mostly kids who couldn't walk. So once the earthquake stopped, we grabbed all the kids and started evacuating the building, because it seemed like it was going to fall. And then we got as far away from the building as we can within the compound, but there were walls around this orphanage. There's walls around almost every building in Haiti. So we had to stay away from the wall, because we didn't want the walls to fall on us, but we didn't want the building to fall on us either. So I just stayed there with these kids and tried to keep them calm. And we didn't know at that point the magnitude of what had just happened. We were down in the city. We couldn't see around us. But we were in the city of Port-au-Prince, which is the capital. And millions of people in this city. They live on top of each other. It's very overpopulated, but didn't know what was going on around us. Our phones didn't work. Everybody was trying to make phone calls at the same time, and a lot of the towers went down too. So it was eliminating the ability to communicate. I I knew my dad was nearby. His office building, the World Vision office building, was about a couple miles from where I was at, and he knew I was there. So I just waited and waited and waited to see who would show up. And eventually, it's dark now. Eventually, my dad showed up, and he came to find me, and he pulled me aside, and he said that he had gone back to the house, the apartments, and my mom and my two sisters had just gotten home, so he knew they were in there, and the apartments were completely collapsed, and there's nobody alive inside. That's what he told me. He didn't tell me they were dead, but he that was his assumption, and that's the picture he painted for me. And it was like hearing something that, I didn't want to believe. It didn't really stick. Like I didn't cry or anything. I was just like, nah, there's no way. Like there's no way. Like we wouldn't be in a place like this helping people, and something that horrible, happened to us. There's no way. So anyway, he had a car, and he took me up the mountain to our pastor's house. He had a house up in the mountains where it was safer, and he had a satellite phone. So we were able to call out to the US, and we told a couple close friends that me and my dad were okay, and we were going to go look for the girls as soon as we could. To backpedal a little bit, my dad was the first point of contact from the US when the earthquake happened. So he was the director of World Vision Haiti, and CNN, a guy named Wolf Blitzer, who's a famous reporter with CNN at the time. He got my dad on the phone within a minute of the earthquake happening. And my dad didn't know anything, just like me. He was, he couldn't see the big picture. And so he had people trying to give him info, but really nothing to say. But just a little fun fact, I guess. He was the first point of contact from the US. So that night, couldn't sleep. Aftershocks hitting again and again and again. And the aftershocks were like 5.0. So you could definitely feel them. And all the unstable buildings that hadn't fallen were starting to now collapse, and the rubble of the fallen buildings was shifting. So it was hurting and trapping more people. And yeah, that whole night I just couldn't sleep and was thinking about what I could do to help. And I just wanted to be out there to find my family. There was wailing and crying all night long. You could just hear the whole country in a disarray. Lots and lots of people died. So a fact about the earthquake, 300,000 people died during this earthquake, which I believe is the largest natural disaster in modern history. And a million people left homeless. And I think there's only 7 million in the whole country. So a very large percentage of the people were either dead or without a home. The next morning, I got up as soon as the sun was starting to rise, and I wanted to get my dad down the mountain, and I wanted to start looking. And he's like, no, we need to eat. We need our strength for today. Like, sit down, eat. And I felt no sense of urgency from him, which was killing me. But I was like, okay, he's right. I need to eat. So I sat down and ate a little bit. And he starts talking about funeral plans for the family. And I couldn't believe it. Like, to him, they were dead. And so I got up. I couldn't compose myself anymore. And I walked over to the balcony, which now we're up in the mountains. It looked over the city, And it's my first time seeing the city from that vantage point in the daylight. And there's fires everywhere. There's big smokes in the air. Just everything looks like a war zone. And you can hear people, just crying and crying. And some people were singing, but you could tell it's like to comfort somebody else who's crying. And I saw that is so vivid in my memory still. This was 13 years ago. Then I started crying. And that's the first time I cried for the country of Haiti and for my family and what we had all been through. And I still wanted to believe that my family was alive. But I knew as a whole, we had all been through something together. So I knew that like everybody I came in contact with from that point on, we were all brothers and sisters, trying to make it to the next day, So we started heading down the mountain, and there's people carrying luggage up the mountain. There's people carrying luggage down the mountain. It seemed like nobody knew what to do or where to go. We got to my dad's office, the World Vision headquarters, and our plan was to get, shovels and water, tarps, stuff to dig, stuff to like try and body recovery at this point, or maybe one of the family members was alive. So do as much good work as we could. And we got to the office, and as we start looking around, somebody runs over to us and says, "Hey, your family's here." And we were confused. And my mom and one of my sisters are holding each other, and they're coming in the back gate, covered in debris, white, dusty, beat up, bloody. And my sister's helping my mom walk. And then my youngest sister, who I didn't see, I think she was like 4 years old at the time. I was like, oh man, she didn't make it. Like that's the thought I had in my head. But somebody brought her in and was carrying her, and she was okay, but she couldn't see at that moment from debris in her eyes. So we all just ran, the family, we all ran together. We held each other, we cried, and we all made it. It was incredible.
That is
something
unbelievable.
Something I think about. Yeah, I think about it almost every day. So I was given a second shot, to have my family. And so yeah, from that point on, we got my family evacuated out. The U.S. Air Force came, and within about a day and a half, my mom, my two sisters, and my dad were on a plane back to the U.S. to get some help. And I wanted to stay behind. I had the EMT training and some search and rescue training and firefighter training, and I knew the language enough to go get around from living there previously. So everybody told me, you got to get out of here. You got the golden ticket. The military will evacuate you. And I said, my golden ticket's staying here, because everybody's going to want to come down and help. And the airport is broken, and they're not going to allow people to come down here. And I know I can help. I'm boots on the ground right now. So I stayed for a couple more weeks. And initially I helped try and distribute some food from World Vision that had been brought in. And we tried twice, and both times there were major riots, and we had to barely get out of there and drive off and not distribute the food, because everybody was so desperate. Food, water, and gasoline were the high priority items. Nobody cared about money or possessions. It was just survival at that point. And eventually I joined up with a helicopter team. A privately funded group of 3 helicopters came down with some guys from Utah. And we were working out of the airport, picking up food and dropping that all over the country. And I felt that was by far the most effective work I was able to participate in all day long. Helicopter ride, drop food, helicopter ride. We're jumping out, Rambo knives, cutting open bags of beans, hopping back in as it was taking off, and a lot of fun, but a lot of really good work too. And then at night, we would sleep in the Dominican Republic on a baseball field. They'd land all their helicopters there, and it was safer. They hired armed security to just keep us safe. And then in the daytime, we'd work in Haiti. And Haiti was getting really dangerous because the prisons broke open. So all the criminals were loose. There was rumors of a tsunami coming because of the earthquake. Yeah, so there's a lot of extra risks and hazards, and people were getting desperate the longer they went without food and water too. So crimes were starting to occur. I did get to work with a search and rescue team that had come down, and we didn't pull anybody out alive. We got body parts and whatnot, but it was tough. It was tough. You really needed the technical knowledge and equipment that these big heavy rescue teams have from like the department I work with now. They were down there. Actually, funny story. I was wearing the county's clothing. I had a t-shirt, and this was before I was on the job. This is before I got hired. So I lost everything I had in the apartments during the collapse, but I was wearing a LA County Fire Department t-shirt and hat. And as my family, we had to go to the U.S. Embassy for them to get evacuated out. When I was with them there, LA County Task Force 2, USAR, search and rescue team, had just landed. And I saw them, and I was waving, and I was like, hey. And here we are halfway across the world, and there's a guy wearing their county stuff.
Yeah.
And a kid. I was 19 at that time. And I was like, hey, I've done training with the department. I'm not hired or anything, but I know the language. Can I work with you guys? And they said no, like crushed me. I was like, oh yeah, I know, but my first goal was to get hired and then to get on that team, because I remembered that moment and how I wanted to be part of that team so badly, and I couldn't, and I ended up getting to do a lot of other really cool stuff, but working with that team would have been pretty neat. So once I did get hired, it's about 2 years worth of additional training and courses that you have to go do on your own. And then you can apply to be part of the team. And so I did that. And so eventually I did get on that team. And I was in Costa Rica when the turkey thing happened, on vacation. So I didn't get to participate, but I know that helping out in Haiti is probably one of the most valuable things I would ever be able to do in that type of scenario. And hopefully nothing as bad as Haiti ever happens again. I know the chances are pretty high that stuff can definitely happen that's tragic and kills a lot of people.
Unfortunately, the chances of things like that happening again are unfortunately very high. But this is kind of the way I look at our entire sector, because I'm like, you don't wish those things upon people, but when it happens, you want to be the one able to go and do it. And when whenever I come back from a good job or something like that, and I say, oh, it's a good job, people go, what was it? And you go, it's, for RTC, HGV, whatever. And they're like, how the fuck is that a good job? And you're like, yeah, you probably don't get it. It's not, I don't mean it in that way. You never wish ill upon those people. You can control the controllables. You know what I mean? You would never wish that upon somebody, but when that call comes in, you want to be the one going.
Yes. We train so hard for all this stuff to be an asset, a valuable asset, and to be able to help out. And that's what we want. We want to work. It's like training a dog or whatever, he wants to do all of his training because he's worked so hard, to get to that point. And
so take me back.
We don't want anything bad to happen, but yeah, go ahead.
Take me back to that coming home from that sort of incident, because I would imagine that gives you a very, very strange and surreal sense of both gratitude, but also like perspective on the value of family. But not only that, there's a huge aspect to survivor's guilt with something like that, I'd imagine.
Yeah, you touch on some good points. There's a story to me getting out of Haiti too, and I'll start with that. Um, I had lost my passport and my money and all my stuff, and they weren't flying people out of Haiti very frequently. So there's people backed up for weeks, sleeping at the airport, trying to get home. And I stayed for about 3 weeks after the earthquake and did all that stuff. And at one point, I was like, okay, it's time for me to go home. So I hadn't had contact with my family. They didn't I didn't have a phone or anything. They didn't know I was trying to get home. Um, but I told myself I'm just gonna go to the airport and see what happens. And without my passport or any money. So I show up and they're still scanning people through security and everything like that. And I just walked through and nobody stopped me. So I got into the airport and I kept walking until I got out onto the tarmac. And there's
Whoa.
tents on the tarmac and there's people like sleeping and with their luggage. And looks like there'd been a lot of people there for a long time trying to catch a flight somehow. And there's little private flights coming in and out, and mostly just relief airplanes landing, dropping supplies, taking off. And for me, within 45 minutes, I was on an airplane headed to the Bahamas. So it came up to me
Fuck.
as soon as I walked out on the tarmac, and they said, "Hey, we have a one vacancy. Somebody didn't make it, and this plane's about to leave. Do you want to go?" Just randomly. And I was like, "Yep." So they didn't charge me. They didn't ask my ID or anything. It was like a charity plane or something. I think it was MAF, Missions Aviation Fellowship, was the company, and they told me just say it, make a donation if you can, when you get home, and if you feel like you can in your heart, that's all we ask. I was like, okay.
That's
So
crazy.
we flew to Bahamas, landed, fueled up, and then took off and landed in Florida. And when we landed in Florida, um, customs and everything, I just walked through. They didn't ask me for my passport or anything, and my path was paved for me somehow. Like I think God was looking out, and he was like, "It's time for you to get you back home." And as soon as I got out of the airport, I borrowed a phone. I called my dad. I let him know I was okay. I made it back to the U.S. and he paid for me to the next day fly to see them in Connecticut where they were. And I saw them for a few days, and then I got back home to California. And you ask about uh, how I feel about family and my appreciation for life and survivor's guilt. Part of the story I didn't share yet, which did give me some guilt. When I got to Haiti, one of the reasons I was visiting was one to see my family, but two to teach firefighting with the United Nations on about a month's temporary teaching position.
Wow.
So I had to get there, and then it was scheduled, but I had to interview with the United Nations to get the clearance and the badge and everything. And my interview was scheduled during the time of the earthquake on the day of the earthquake. Just so happens the day before I called them, I realized I was wasting my time not getting to work right away. So I wanted to interview a day early. I called them, I scheduled it, they approved it, and I went in, did my interview, went well, got the badge. And had I had not rescheduled, that building killed everybody in it. 300 people died in that building the next day during the earthquake, and I would have been there. So I know that I got a second chance as well. And one of the ways that I've been paying this debt, I'm living on, it seems like I'm living on borrowed time. My whole family got this second chance. I started a nonprofit organization building houses for earthquake survivors. So it took a little bit for me at 19 years old to figure out how to do this, raise money, get a staff, and just
Yeah.
like what that looked like. Um, so I got to start speaking at schools, churches, sharing my story, raising awareness. And that's one of the ways that it was therapeutic for me, because I was getting to talk to so many people, and I wasn't just keeping it inside, where my family had a much harder time because they were whisked out of Haiti immediately, didn't get to process the next couple weeks,
Mm.
and then they're just in recovery. Where I got to see, like, okay, day 2, day 3, day 4, like how Haiti's unfolding in front of me, and then go talk about it constantly, as I raise money to build these houses. So for me, I didn't need a lot of, I guess, therapy, where my family did.
Yeah, because that helps you kind of process the situation, but also, again, it echoes back to that context, doesn't it? If you just snatch somebody straight out of trauma, then, well, what happened to the person, or why did it happen to start with, or what happened after I left, and they fill in the blanks with their own sort of embellished traumatic experience as though it was an indefinite thing that almost carried on forever. Whereas obviously, even when you left, there was colossal amounts of tragedy still happening around you, but at least began that closure loop a little bit. I'm not going to pretend for 1 second that you ever perhaps get closure on something like that. I don't know, but yeah, it's almost less aggressive and abrupt trauma, perhaps.
Yeah, so it took my family years to, and they're good now, but it took years of therapy, and they were in pain. They didn't have any like major, they thought my mom broke her arm and her leg, but she didn't, just like very deep bruising and stuff. But the psychological aspect, they PTSD,
Mm.
post-traumatic stress disorders, and loud noises and vibrations, and not sleeping through the night, and just everything had them on edge. And I think for me, what I noticed, especially while I was still in Haiti, before I got home, but after the earthquake, I was not sleeping well, and I'd flail around in my sleep, and I never used to do that. And loud noises, and the vibrations, and also experiencing those aftershocks, um, which were happening, are all
Yeah,
kind of triggering the same like
yeah.
traumatic, emotional response from me. Um, but yeah, so I'm doing okay. I've gotten to share my story now hundreds of times, and I can give you the 2-minute version or the 2-hour version. There's, lots to be unpacked depending on who wants to hear it. But so far, I've been back to Haiti quite a few times, and we've built 39 houses, and they're all for families who need it the most,
39 houses. Wow.
So yeah, I got to do that. And in the meantime, in between getting hired as a firefighter, still had to pay the bills. So I learned a trade, which was construction and carpentry. And that's how I was able to build these houses and also pay the bills at home. I wasn't getting paid from that, but at home I was installing doors. That was my specialty, locks and doors, which kind of contributes to some of the things I've made.
Yeah.
Um, but
How long
yeah,
would it
it's
take
been
you?
quite the
Sorry,
journey.
just take me there for a second. When you go over and you're working with your foundation, you're working with the nonprofit and stuff like that, what would it look like rebuilding? Because construction over there is very different, and the sort of size and layouts of these properties. And I imagine just materials in general are not easy to come across in a country like that, where everyone is ultimately trying to achieve the same thing.
Right. So Haiti is grossly deforested. There's no trees. All the wood is imported, the wood that we were building with for the houses that I was putting up. Um, and then concrete is hard to get. So that's always a struggle, and the price changes. But I try and set up everything before we go down.
Yeah.
So they are prefabbed as much as possible. They'll build the trusses and get the walls together. And these aren't houses you're used to.
Yeah.
They're small, tin roof, concrete foundation, but everything else is wood. So wood structure, and if it were to fall on you, you'd probably live. Like these aren't unreinforced concrete, which is what killed a lot of people in Haiti. We tried to stay away from that. And as far as the property goes, we would go through the elders in the villages to see who needed these houses the most. And most of the time it was the pastor who would kind of be the leader in the village. And he would give us backstories. So we'd vet different families. Single mom with 7 kids. Okay, she probably needs a house pretty bad. Like we'd cherry pick who had the most need.
That's got to be hard though, because you're ultimately saying no to a bunch of people at the same time. And every story is probably very difficult to read.
Yes. And part of that would be we'd let the pastor pick some people first.
Okay.
And then we would approve it. Like we'd be like, okay, if these are the people you think need it the most, let's hear it. Let's hear about it. And okay, I think you're right. Those are some very needy, desperate people who need a place to be safe. Shelter and security. Haiti is you've been, so Haiti is a very outside culture. People spend a lot of time interacting with each other, being in the street, but at night they need a place where they can lock the door and keep a few of their what little belongings that they have. So that was the purpose of these houses. Protect the people from being attacked, let them protect themselves and their stuff, and then keep them safe from the elements. And so they needed to have a little piece of property. And in Haiti, the way it works is the government owns everything. But if you set up somewhere, it's pretty much yours. So as long as they had a place for us to build, we'd build on it. And we'd hire Haitian construction workers to help out, to go clear the land, to help swing hammers, hikes. Sometimes we're hiking through the jungle with this stuff. We tried to get out of the city where it was so overpopulated, and more out into the countryside, but not displace people. It had to be it had to make sense.
Yeah.
So we have some houses. The 39 of them are all spread out, but we have coordinates, and some of them are next to each other. We did run into one problem where we built on somebody else's land, where initially they had given permission, but then they changed their mind, and they wanted favors from the person we built for, and we weren't okay with that. So we actually went back, broke down the house, and built it again somewhere else. And we can do most of the building in a day, and we actually pour the concrete foundation afterwards. So we'll build the wood and the roof, and then once it's in place, we'll pour, and then that makes the floor, and there's anchor straps, and it all sits together strong, and there's more straps for when the weather is bad. Haiti gets a lot of hurricanes. So as far as I know, all these houses over the years have withstood all the hurricanes and earthquakes. There have been a few more earthquakes, but nothing too crazy.
Mate, that is strange. And how old are you now?
33.
Same age as me. Shit. So, man, you've really, really gone for it with doing something like this. That is ridiculous, my man. So take me to working day to day now. What does that look like, going through experiences like that? And, the fire service globally is going through some serious challenges. How do you balance that factor of going to the places that you go to, realizing how incredibly lucky we are in the Western world and some of the privileges we have, yet people can moan, people can still struggle. But again, they don't have that sort of spectrum of perspective that you have, where you have seen what true desperation looks like.
Yeah. I always tell people we live in a bubble. The rest of the world is not as fortunate as us. Our complaints, we got the wrong coffee, or we got a speeding ticket in our car. Oh, you have a car? That's really nice. Oh, you're able to have coffee today. That's really nice too. There's a million things we take for granted. And once you see poverty like there is in Africa or Haiti, Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Um, it definitely puts things in a different perspective where we worry about stuff that does not matter.
Yeah.
Our worst days are nothing compared to the worst day of a Haitian, where every day is a battle to survive. And that's how I felt even as a protected, well-off missionary in Haiti. It seemed like every day was survival, stressful, and they're really not when you put it in perspective of like, did you die today? Did you get shot at today? Did one of your
Yeah.
friends get kidnapped today? No? Okay, well, then you had a good day. So that has helped me deal with all the stresses of the job. Um, I mean, you see dead body frequently, at work, or somebody who was attacked or shot or stabbed. Those are bad situations, but I'm able to handle that. That doesn't mess with me like it would maybe somebody who hasn't experienced the trauma that I've been through and that I've seen.
So another thing, or one of the main things I like that I feel like that has been such a main thing that I wanted to discuss with you now, and I didn't realize we were going to go there. That's incredible. One of the things I did want to talk to you about is some of the incredible innovations, and actually hearing some of your backstory doesn't entirely surprise me that you've now gone on to what we're going to speak about with Williams Key. But take me through to how this kind of project company came about. Give us a bit of background on your specialisms with door access and challenges with gaining entry, and what led to the creation of Williams Key.
So with the construction that I was doing, the specialty, it was a carpenter trade, but the specialty was installing doors and locks, mostly in commercial settings. So we'd be doing a couple hundred doors at a college or a school. Sometimes we do police stations, fire stations, refineries, just all very industrial, commercial type doors. So I got really good knowing locks, knowing how locks worked, knowing how doors worked, the different brands of like companies that made these locks and everything. So that was in my Rolodex before I got hired. Once I got hired as a firefighter, we're kicking down doors every day and breaking these locks. And it hurt me because I knew how expensive these things are and how unnecessary it is sometimes. If you had a little bit more knowledge about the lock or the door, we could prevent these homeowners and these business owners from having a $2,000 repair or $3,000 repair. So I had a couple of tools I'd made for myself from my construction job, and I've always thought that way. I've always been a tinkerer and like to make stuff for myself, make my own tools. So I'd made myself a Williams key, and I didn't call it that at the time. It was just a piece of metal that I would pull out, and I have a little toolbox I'd always carry with me. And I know how to pick locks and stuff like that too, but that can be more time consuming, especially in an emergency setting. So I usually don't get that far with it. If I can't get in with the tools that I've made, we're probably going to break the door, which is fun too. And, there's a skill set to that as well. We use the Halligan, and I'm sure you guys
pair
have
of irons.
yeah, the irons, exactly. So I love those too. And there's a time and a place for those. But people were seeing me pull out my homemade tools again and again every shift and getting into the doors. So before long, other people wanted my stuff. And I kept getting bugged about it. And it's not easy to just like make one tool for somebody. It took me like a couple hours, to make my stuff, and cutting apart other tools to make stuff that worked for me. So eventually I'd been asked enough to where I was like, okay, cool. I like to do gifts for the guys in the station. And anytime I travel, I bring back a bunch of gifts, and that's just my love language. Like I like giving stuff away.
Love it.
And so I decided to have maybe like 20 keys made, and those went super fast. I just gave them to everybody that had bugged me about one. And before long, word had spread that, oh, Trevor makes this thing. It's pretty cool. It works well and gets you into doors. So I had like a lot of requests. So then I had 100 made that I sold. And I think they've always been black. Yeah, they'd always had a black powder coat. The original one I made was just straight metal. But with the black powder coat, before long, somebody turned me on to laser engraving. So
Nice.
I came up with a logo. I started putting my logo on these keys. And then I found that I could do custom engraving. So then I could put people's names on these keys. And then they really took off because they're great gifts now, right?
Yeah, because people ain't going to steal them as well.
Yeah, or you might, you won't get it stolen quite as easily. So yeah, then it just exploded and it kind of took over my life. At this point, I'm coming up on 15,000 Williams keys that I've sold.
Fucking hell.
It's been every day since I've been doing it for a couple of years now. And every day I've got 20 to 100 orders to fill. Sometimes really big orders. Some days it'll be like one or two on a slow day, but for the most part, it's like every day I'm off. I'm not really off. I'm at home trying to fill these orders, and
I feel your pain.
yeah, respond to customer service issues. There were a lot of issues initially, but I think now that the brand is established, nobody really questions it anymore.
Yeah.
And I get a lot less like complaints and emails. And every once in a while, some guy will embarrass himself because he bought the tool, didn't really know how to use it, and wanted to show off to his whole squad or the chief or whatever, but never practiced and like couldn't get in. Yeah. Now he's embarrassed and blames me, but it's really not my fault. It's his failure.
For people that are unfamiliar, we're referencing it in here, and we'll put some links and stuff into the notes, but give us the principle of how exact. I mean, there's I think there's like 6 or 7 variations of the videos that I've watched of different lockers, side gates, different door latches. But try, if you can, articulate to us the concept of how this works, because we spoke a little bit about lock picking, but this is not something you're inserting in the barrel of a log.
No, this doesn't touch the where a key would go at all. It looks like a L-shaped framing square, and it's beveled at the end at an angle, and I call that side the blade. So if it's a L shape, the longer portion is the blade, and that is designed to get behind the strike of a lock, which is the throw, and push it out of the way and bypass it. And it's also designed to reach behind, we call it an anti-vandal plate, which is a piece of metal that gets in the way of you trying to tamper with the lock, but this will still get behind it. As long as it's not the whole door. Most of the times they're about a foot long.
We've seen them retrofitted to emergency doors on the outside of them, and they can cause a problem sometimes. But the one you've sent me, I don't know if it's the biggest one you've got, but it's quite an extra long one. I've got it at work actually, and we've tried it on some of those external emergency exits, and you're right, it will slip right up behind them because it's long enough.
Is it? I know your viewers can't see this, but I'm going to show you one real quick. Is it this one?
Yes.
That size?
Yep.
Okay, this is actually the smallest one. So
the one that I've got, I can just get in my tunic, get in my bunker jacket. Fuck me, if anything bigger than that, I'd have to be carrying it on the truck.
Yeah. So we call it the triple XL Magnum, and it is. I got to talk in inches because I don't know the millimeters quite as well, but or feet. Maybe feet are better, but it's almost 3 feet long. It's 35 inches. So I got one here that is the newest
91
one.
centimeters. That's a fucking big bit of kit.
So this, let me see.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
This is the newest
fold in on the
one.
end? Is that
And
the one?
now we just released this about a week ago. We make one that folds
Yeah.
on the end though, just the end. So
Yeah.
this is actually the main purpose initially was so I could ship it better and put it in a poster tube
Yeah.
because shipping this without it folding is they were getting damaged and it takes me 20-30 minutes to package and I
Balling.
wasn't even advertising them because I didn't like the time it took me to prepare it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those are the Williams keys. There's 4 versions. There's 2 small ones and 2 big ones. And there's a version of the small one that also folds. So this is the most popular because
Yeah.
it'll fit.
That is the ideal one in my mind personally, because that one will go straight in your jacket or straight in your kit bag and you can have it with you on the truck. I would probably suggest the larger one is bought by the department or the station to live on the truck permanently. Whereas
Yes.
that smaller one, and I'm sure I'm fucking, all this far better than me. I hate it when people tell you what to do with your fucking business. I'm like, but no,
I'm always open to advice. I'm
no,
always
no,
open.
fucking, I've got no useful advice, I promise you. But yeah, no, just for the listeners' context, yeah, 100% fitting in the side of the tunic. When you, even for like people in the UK, when you're trying to get down the side access to a lot of properties, just to see if there is, a door and out the back or a window open, rather than forcing entry through the front. We go to a lot of assist ambulance and stuff like that where they don't have powers of entry in the UK.
Mhm.
So they tend to call us. They used to call the police. I don't know why they don't go anymore, but we tend to go to pretty much everything now. And it's always gain entry. And like you say, the person's either injured or they've passed out or they're dead. But sometimes there's no need to cause that level of damage, because then you're ultimately going to have to re-secure it yourself. And when they come out of hospital, they're coming back to a fucked up front door and they're going to have to pay, £1,000 to get it fixed.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of the times when we were using these would be not fire blowing out the front door. That's when it's time to do some damage.
Just do some
and
fucking damage.
use
Just
your
make a
irons.
hole.
Yeah. But if it's medical and you don't want to wait for a key or nobody's coming to the door, a lot of times guys have broken doors to the wrong house too.
Yep.
So that's
We've
when
done
it's
that lots of times.
really unnecessary. So you definitely don't want to be breaking a door when it's not warranted. You want to. So these have saved a lot of people some grief, and we use them on a lot of the medical calls. We'll do investigations where there might be a fire, there might not, but we're not seeing smoke and fire, so we don't necessarily want to do damage yet. And yeah, these get through a lot of the gates, especially like apartment gates and some of the commercial settings. And you can bend them. They'll hit the panic hardware, the push bar. In some scenarios, the bigger one especially, it's easier to bend, so you can hit the
shit. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
panic hardware.
I'm
with
sure that video is on there somewhere already, but I'd never even thought about that one, because for certain, I don't know if we'd still be able to get the latch anyway, to be honest. But no, you're right. You could still reach through, bend it, and grab the pull bar.
We've had different versions of thickness for the steel in these tools. So there was a version that was thinner and very bendy, and we had to get away from that, get a little bit thicker, because everybody thought they were breaking it. Every time they used it, it would bend a little bit, but it was great for the bars, the panic bars. People get into windows with these sometimes, depending on the style of the window. I get tons of content, and that's the reason why this has been so easy to market, is people like making videos and sending them in. So I love videos, and I'll ask people sometimes, but for the most part, people will just make them on their own, send them in, or send me a photo with it, and they just love it. They like the feeling they get when they open a door, because it actually works. Not all the time, but it works a lot of the time. And I think people like get addicted to like, I did something, and I blew the mind of this other person I was working with. They couldn't believe it, and then they wanted one too. So it really sells itself in that aspect. But yeah, the content has been great. Just people will figure out ways to use it that I never even thought of, and now it has even more versatility that I didn't even design it for. But hey, it works really good. Some people will they'll trick. Some of these doors have sensors on them, and if it's a double door, you can reach the tool through. and jiggle it and trick the sensor, and then the doors open that way too. So that was like one more use that I never intended initially, but now people do that all the time.
Well, it's like the old, did you ever slide the roof crawlers underneath the security gates of a complex so it thinks it's a vehicle on the other side? Yeah.
Yeah.
First time
like
I saw that, it was a fucking mind blower. I was like, oh, yeah. Well, look, man, that is absolutely incredible. Huge congratulations on the business. Are you happy for people can people ship? Can people order from the UK?
Oh, yeah. You can't see it, but there's a map in my office of the whole world, and I've got pins all over it. And yeah, we've sent to, I think it's 29 countries other than the US right now.
You must have a team working with you now, right? This is shit. Is it all you still? Jesus,
me
man.
and the wife, she helps out sometimes. She's been pregnant for the last 2 years though, so she's not quite as fast as me. Her
fingers covered in paint because she's constantly spraying and all that sort of shit.
She's good at peeling stickers off, and I've got a daughter now, a 10-month-old, so I'm hoping she'll be able to help me soon.
Yeah, a couple more months, get her to work.
Yeah.
Well, look, man, Trevor, that's absolutely incredible, brother. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for also, like, that whole aspect of Haiti and what you did out there, mate. That was like a fucking sideswipe for me. I did not envisage going there in this conversation. It sounds horrible, but like Haiti's kind of a template of how some people can begin to try and recover from these things, and how for people such as yourself who have incredible motivations can look to start trying to add value, because sometimes just sending colossal amounts of money to these places doesn't really make a difference, and maybe it finds its way into the wrong hands. And I'm not for 1 second pretending that Haiti has solved everything and it's back where it needs to be. That's a generational thing that's going to take a long time, but it's incredible to see the work that you've done and managed to pull so many people along with you.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to share, and it's been an honor getting to know you and be on the show.
Mate, it's beautiful. We will put some notes in, obviously, the notes of the podcast, and we will put links into Williams Key. Are you happy for us to bang an email address, or do you prefer they reach you through the platform? Where's the best way to get in contact with you?
All the social media platforms are great. I'm the quickest on Instagram, the Williams Key. But also email is fine, thewilliamskey@gmail.com.
Beautiful.
Those are the two best ways.
I'm back in work next week. I will get my head out of my ass, and I will try and get a little video on the go of using it on some of our different structures on our fire training unit and stuff like that. But thank you for your time, my friend. Send my love to your family, send my love to your good wife and to your daughter as well. And I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you.
All right, my friend. See you soon.
Take care.
Firefighters Podcast is put together to develop, inspire, and hopefully even motivate those individuals who have chosen to serve our communities and be part of the first responder family. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield. If you have enjoyed today's episode and you want to see the podcast continuing, please head over to our Patreon page where you can support the ongoing efforts of the podcast. Please hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on whatever platform you're listening to. Please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.